this
let's bring in George Galloway at that point, because you were one of those people that was informed by the police that your name, that it might have happened or that it has happened.
Well, the police were exemplary in their conduct of my case. A very senior officer came to my then office in Parliament and told me that in the raid on Glenn Mulcaire's premises they had found evidence which suggested that he had been hacking my telephone. And they advised me to change my number and change my PIN number and gave me one or two other pieces of advice for which I was very grateful. So I have no personal complaint against the police.
And did they say, so did they give you an indication of a newspaper?
Yes, they told me Glenn Mulcaire, who was in the employ
but he was saying it was definitely in relation to News of the World. And what action are you taking?
I began a civil action for breach of privacy. I have a court date some months hence. The News of the World are busily offering me substantial sums of money.
So that's down the line. On the broader question here, and specifically about the way the Metropolitan Police have investigated it so far, what are your thoughts?
There do seem to be questions that need answering. It's odd, for example, that they came to my office in the Parliament to tell me, but walked past the office of the Deputy Prime Minister of the day and a Minister, Chris Bryant, without telling them. There seemed to be questions about why they sat on evidence but did not pursue it, and did not pursue additional evidence which the News of the World have now handed to them.
The acting commissioner there saying the Metropolitan Police aren't evasive. I mean, John Yates, who was also at that meeting, who carried out that investigation and said there was no more evidence, said, you know, I had, you know, facts, but that's one thing. Turning it into an evidence is another. Are you satisfied with what the police have done so far?
No, not at all. I mean, I thought when Yates said that, oh, all I had was innuendo. No, what he had was a specific allegation from somebody who was known to have been involved in phone hacking at the News of the World. Now, if there is a specific allegation, you follow it up. But much more than that, if you look at the reports that there were to the Select Committee, it was very clear that 3 years ago there was a report made to James Murdoch by Myler at the time, and also by the most senior lawyer in News International. And they gave him a briefing about why they were paying £700,000 to somebody who had been a victim of phone hacking by them. Now, if James Murdoch did not then say, look, is there any more of this? How come we're paying out almost £750,000 on this? Then there's something very dodgy about that.
Mark Phil Brown-Paddock says in the film there that obviously, you know, the Metropolitan Police are, which we know, very worried about their kind of image, their reputation, how they look. Obviously, they need newspapers on their side. Is that any excuse, or do you feel that they have gone in, they've soft-pedalled on this?
No, clearly there is an element of a grey area, and at times the police do need to have the press on board. The press, perhaps, on big criminal investigations, can provide certain leads to the police. And there is that relationship. And obviously,
do you think
it seems to step beyond the line.
If you don't look, you don't find, and they haven't looked?
Well, I think that's self-evidently the case, that they've gone to George, but haven't gone, as I say, down the corridor to either John Prescott or Chris Bryant.
Because they're frightened of what it might open up?
Well, no, I suspect, as you say, there's been a long-standing relationship, and, you know, it's not a surprise whenever well-known celebrities get done for drunk driving, and suddenly it's all over.
But also, I'm wondering about the scale of it. If you look, if it is on the scale at which it is being suggested now, this has huge implications. You can't bring, you know, actions against people over, I don't know, 300, 400 people hacked. Can you, George Galloway?
Well, I think that's already in train. But the real big question that Mark didn't really answer with respect is, David Cameron didn't just employ the then editor of the News of the World, but he had dinner on Christmas Day with James Murdoch himself. Yeah. I mean, the closeness of the Tories to the Murdoch empire must have some bearing, cast some shadow on all of this.
Do you accept that? I mean, of course the party is saying, look, it's now a police matter, we're having 2 further investigations. Is that enough for you? Do you accept that this does potentially look toxic and quite dangerous for the Conservatives?
No, I don't think for the Conservatives in particular. I mean, as I say, one could argue that the relationship between News International and the Labour Party for most of the 15 years before the Conservatives came into government last year was very strong as well. I mean, it doesn't reflect well, I think, on many of the players involved, but I think that clearly are some big questions for the Metropolitan Police in terms of their conduct, and obviously it will have an impact, I suspect, when it comes to the whole issue with Murdoch's bid for B-Sky-B, which is, of course, quite imminent.
And Barry Gardiner, happy that the Metropolitan Police is still investigating something that they may not have done very well the first time?
The Metropolitan Police have to answer some very serious questions. Do they know of any instance when any police officer receives money in return for information? They have to answer questions like that. They have to answer questions about what they knew about the relationships, the hospitality that goes on between the newspaper industry, between the media and the police force themselves.
And on that note, to all three of you, thanks very much indeed.